Welcome to the Backyard Professor Esoteric Studies. I titled this, Who is Tom Bombadil in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings? I finally finished my study, my analysis. I've been thinking about this for quite some time. I have been studying and reading the various different ideas on who this most enigmatic character in Tolkien is, and I have a theory. Now, I did not come up with this theory first, but I do believe this is the strongest case for who Tom Bombadil is, and I will make my case here. All of the studies that I've been studying are extremely interesting and very fun to look through, but I do believe the one I'm about to present has the strongest evidence and the strongest logic and information demonstrating the overall approach that I take with this really fun subject. And again, one of the mysteries in the world's literature that keeps us going back over and over and over again for more, because you can never get too much of the mysteries. So let me present my research to you. I formally called this The Eldest and the River, Tolkien's Bombadil as the Creator Within Creation. The enigma of the eldest. Among the many puzzles in The Lord of the Rings, none has provoked more debate than the figure of Tom Bombadil. From the moment he steps into the tale, singing the hobbits out of old man's willow's grasp, his very presence resists categorization. Tolkien's careful cosmology, the Iluvatar, the Valar, the Maiar, the elves and men, it leaves no ready place for him. In a 1954 letter to his proofreader, Tolkien remarked, Tom Bombadil is not an important person to the narrative. I suppose he has some importance as a comment. That's letters 153. The wording is telling here. Bombadil may be extraneous to the plot, yet he embodies something crucial about the act of creation itself. Tolkien also noted in his letters, as a story, I think it is good that there should be a lot of things unexplained, especially if an explanation actually exists. And even in a mythical age, there must be some enigmas, as there always are. Tom Bombadil is one, intentionally. So what role does he play in the story? Well, he's a threshold guide. He's a transitional figure. His appearance comes early in the story as the hobbits leave home. He helps them cross thresholds, the forest and the barrow, safely. He giving them shelter, stories, and weapons, the dagger from the Barrow Downs. It's a moral contrast to Dominion. Bombadil is a foil to the pervasive theme of power, control, and possession. In a world driven by rings, claims, kingdoms, and dominion even, his way is one of not dominating, of singing with life rather than forcing it. There's a sense of wonder and depth. Bombadil's presence deepens the world by adding mystery. He reminds the reader that Middle-earth is layered with ancient things beyond the current conflicts. As a preservation of the, quote, wild, Bombadil suggests that there are corners of the world that resist corruption and domination, or at least can preserve a kind of autonomy. And it can be a commentary on a meta level. Tolkien himself once wrote to his proofreader in 1954, Tom Bombadil is not an important person to the narrative, I suppose he has some importance as a comment. So, while Tom doesn't change the fate of Sauron or the success of the quest, he changes how we see the world, offering a different mode of being, one not centered on conquest or control. Well, how far does his power extend? He can command Old Man Willow. He can rescue from Barrow Wights. But can he affect things far outside his domain? The text suggests not, or at least that he chooses not to. Why is he immune to the ring? The fact that the ring has no hold on him, that's significant. Again, it's one of the clues I keep reminding us of in literature that make us want to dig deeper. There's a mystery here. Now, immunity doesn't necessarily mean he's more powerful. It may mean his priorities or boundaries are just different. If he is powerful cosmically, in other words, an Ainu, why does he abstain from intervening? One theory is that he consciously renounced dominion and domination. He chose limits, but that raises further questions about why. So, how to square him with the rest of Tolkien's cosmology? In Tolkien's Legendarium, there's a fairly tight structure. You have the Iluvatar, God, the Ainur, the Valar, the Maiar, the Elves, the Men. Fitting Bombadil into that hierarchy is hard to do without forcing him. Does he evolve or participate in the broader mythic history? After his appearance, he's scarcely mentioned again. Now, Gandalf plans a long visit at the end, but we never see Bombadil in the War of the Ring itself. Why did Tolkien keep him in, given that he slows the narrative? Tolkien was well aware that some readers would see Bombadil as a digression, yet he kept him in, implying that he valued what Bombadil brings beyond plot mechanics, moral texture, mystery, depth. Tom Bombadil is a living symbol of harmony with creation, untainted by the lust for domination. He embodies an alternative to power, one of joyful stewardship and rootedness. In a narrative saturated with struggle for control, Bombadil represents that there is another way. Though one largely outside of the main conflicts, his immunity to the ring is less a show of supremacy and more about a sign that he is not entangled in those ambitions. I also lean toward seeing him as intentionally mysterious. Tolkien seems to allow, he even delights in it, the presence of a figure who cannot be nailed down. That ambiguity makes Bombadil a space for reflection. For readers to ask, are there parts of the world or our souls that resist domination, that hold ancient and fundamental values beyond politics and power struggles? Bombadil offers rich potential to contrast active heroism with silent presence, to contrast control versus surrender, to explore the spiritual resonance of the land itself. He's such a striking figure to investigate. He's whimsical and cosmic. He's folkloric, yet he's almost divine. Philosophically, he is the counterpoint to the lust for power, the embodiment of the unfallen world. Esoterically, he could be the spirit of the land, the divine logos of nature, the primordial word still singing creation. I think that Tom Bombadil represents Tolkien himself. It is his self-portrait inside his own mythology, and I want to explore some of the reasoning. The author made immanent in Middle-earth his own portrait because, joined with Goldberry, the river daughter, he forms a sacred polarity of word and water, Logos and Sophia. Together they mirror the union of mind and flow found throughout myth. The divine pairs of scripture, the lovers of classical legend, even the modern dyads of James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake and the tarot's eternal river of consciousness we find in the major arcana of the Waite Rider tarot deck. Bombadil stands outside the hierarchy of beings because he is the one who imagined that hierarchy. His immunity to the ring, his cheerful detachment from power, and his role as rescuer rather than ruler, all disclose Tolkien's theology of subcreation, creation by participation in the creator's joy rather than the lust for dominion. This interpretation fits Tolkien's whole mythopoeic impulse. Tom and Goldberry, as the author and the muse, the animating consciousness, and the living world he sings into being. In that sense, he is outside the story, omnipotent within his sphere, yet uninterested in controlling what he has created. He sings and reality responds, just as Tolkien's own act of subcreation gives life to Middle-earth. When Tolkien says Tom Bombadil is not an important person to the narrative, I suppose he has some importance as a comment. He's performing two moves at once. One, he's disclaiming narrative necessity. He's shielding the mystery behind modest language so the spell of Middle-earth isn't broken. And the second thing he accomplishes is he's hinting at meta importance, calling him a comment rather than a character. If we take comment literally, Bombadil isn't in the story. He's the authorial voice commenting on it from within it. That's exactly what this reading captures. Bombadil is Tolkien's self-portrait walking through the page. He's the maker acknowledging his own creation and then stepping back and letting it breathe. Look how perfectly the details line up. Not important to the narrative because the narrative belongs to the characters. He refuses to interfere. He has some importance as a comment because he is the narrative's maker, reminding us that creation itself exists beyond the struggle for power. Immune to the ring? Well, that's because the ring symbolizes power through control, and the author's power is creative, not coercive. Lives content in his own domain? Well, this is the artist dwelling inside his imagination. He needs nothing from it except joy. It is as if Tolkien were saying, don't look for Tom's purpose in the plot. Look for him in the margins where the author leaves his smile. This interpretation harmonizes perfectly with that 1954 letter. It reads like Tolkien's gentle wink to anyone who might sense him inside the myth. Not to expose himself, but to invite precisely this kind of digging. We could even frame it this way. When Tolkien called Bombadil a comment, he didn't mean a footnote. He meant a presence, the author's own spirit wandering through the world that he made, reminding us that creation itself is the true miracle, not the battles fought within it. When the hobbits wander into the old forest, Tolkien himself seems to enter the story. Bombadil is not a ballad descended from the music of the Ainur. He is the maker who wrote the music. In Tolkien's own legendarium, Iluvatar creates by song, and the Ainur's harmony becomes the world. Bombadil's power likewise lies in song. He sings trees and spirits into obedience, and the natural world responds as if remembering its source. Within the fiction, this appears quaintly rustic. Read through Tolkien's creative theology, it becomes metafictional. The author's pen turning into a voice inside the page. That reading clarifies Tolkien's oft-quoted letter. Bombadil is not important to the narrative because the narrative belongs to the creatures of Middle-earth, not to their maker. He is a comment because he is the author's aside, the smile of creation looking back upon itself. He cannot be corrupted by the ring precisely because he already contains the power that made it. The ring symbolizes coercive creativity, the will to dominate rather than to delight. Bombadil's indifference actually emphasizes and dramatizes the opposite. This is creation at play, not possession. If Bombadil is the word within the story, Goldberry is its living echo. The Sophia, or the Natra Natrons, that turns word into world. And her description, hair like the reeds, voice like falling water. This makes her a personification of the feminine current of imagination. Tolkien's marriage to Edith underlies this figure. Goldberry's grace is the same river that ran through his own life. Goldberry then is the inspirational current, the river daughter, the flow of imagination itself, the feminine energy that sustains and renews creation. Together they are the union of word and nature, Logos and Sophia, Tolkien and Edith. It's no wonder that the ring, the symbol of coercive creative power, has no effect on him. He already embodies creative power rightly used. Not domination, but joyful song. He's the one being in Middle-earth whose relationship to existence is purely aesthetic and loving, not possessive. Together, Bombadil and Goldberry enact what Christian and Platonic tradition call the conjunctio oppositorum, the conjunction of opposites. Tolkien's self-portrait as the humble yet omnipotent maker, and Goldberry as the muse, Edith as the heart of the world's beauty. The ring as corrupted creativity, power that tries to control rather than to delight, and Bombadil's laughter as the sound of creation itself. Tom is logos, mind, form, the shaping word. Goldberry is Sophia, nature, wisdom, beauty, the flowing medium of manifestation. Their union recalls the divine syzygies of many traditions. The demiurge and Sophia in Gnosticism, where the feminine breathes life into the creative intellect. It recalls Hermes and Aphrodite, the hermaphroditic harmony of intellect and feeling. It also recalls Yahweh and Shekinah in the Kabbalah, the transcendent and indwelling aspects of God, we also are reminded of even Orpheus and Eurydice, whose love and song seek to bridge life and death. Goldberry's title, River Daughter, places her squarely in that lineage. The river is the symbol of time, an imagination, and renewal, the very current through which creation continually flows. And we can see this as the river of consciousness. This river is not confined to Tolkien. It runs visibly through the tarot cards, major arcana of the White Rider deck. The White Rider deck, beginning behind the High Priestess and winding through Temperance, the Star, the Moon, and the World. It is a pictorial stream of consciousness connecting all transformations. This same river reappears in James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, where the opening word, river run, which is pointedly uncapitalized, the very first word of the book, well, this is flowing from the unfinished sentence of the very last page of the book, and it forms a continuous loop. Joyce thus converts language itself into a river without beginning or end. This is the syntax of eternity. The feminine voice of that river is Anna Livia Pluribel, A-L-P, Alp, who is at once woman, water, and the river Liffey flowing through Dublin. Her partner, HCE, here comes everybody. He embodies humanity's collective mind. Alp and HCE are Joyce's version of Goldberry and Bombadil, the flowing muse and the shaping word joined in an endless creative cycle. Tolkien would have disagreed with Joyce's linguistic exuberance without question, yet unconsciously he wrote the same archetype. The Withywindle in Bombadil's Valley is a localized river run. Consciousness entering creation. Goldberry's laughter is the ripple of that current. Bombadil's song gives it form. The world of Middle Earth, like Joyce's circular novel, is sustained by flow rather than finality, by a creative consciousness that never ceases. The motif extends back to Genesis 2 and 10, where a single river issues from Eden and divides into four: the Pishon, the Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates. The image of one source becoming many is the archetype of creation itself. In Tolkien's Cosmology, the music of the Ainur functions the same way. The one song divides into the many realms of Arda. The Withywindle and all other rivers of Middle Earth are its physical echoes. Thus, Goldberry stands in a lineage that includes Eve beside the rivers of paradise, Alp beside the river Liffey, and the Tarot's eternal stream, the feminine waters through which divine imagination becomes material. Joyce's Eve and Adams, Church by the Liffey, mentioned in the first line of Finnegan's Wake, plays on this very myth. The world begins not with dry ground, but with flow. Consciousness, time, and creation all are already in motion. The lowercase r of river run signals that the reader enters midstream, just as Tolkien's Hobbit wander mid-story into Bombadil's Valley. The same theological insight rendered as narrative technique. The human archetype, we can find biblical and folk dyads everywhere. This Logos Sophia rhythm pervades human history as the pairing of masculine and feminine principles. Scripture itself unfolds through creative dyads. We have Adam and Eve, Word meeting Earth, consciousness awakening. Abraham and Sarah, the promise joined to faith. Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah and Rachel, continuity through love and intuition. We have David and Bathsheba, passion leading to the redemptive line. We have Joseph and Mary, the Word made flesh through the receptive womb. Each pair embodies the generative union of word and water, idea and incarnation. Folk tradition preserves the same structure in miniature when we read of Jack and Jill, Hansel and Gretel, Beauty and the Beast. The childlike memory of cosmic polarity translated into nursery language, Bombadil and Goldberry stand as their mythic consummation. The quarrel resolved, the word and nature reconciled at last. Tolkien's handling of Bombadil also reveals his subtle aesthetics of mystery through concealment. In several letters, he insisted that some enigmas must remain. He disliked overt allegory, but he loved applicability. Rather than saying, "I am Bombadil," he allowed readers to sense it. Because to confess outright would have shattered the secondary world's autonomy. Like a good magician, he hides his wand, not to deceive, but to preserve wonder. Biographically, Bombadil was literally Tolkien's eldest creation. He was a character from poems written long before the Silmarillion or the Lord of the Rings. When he inserted that earlier figure into his mature myth, the author let his first imaginative impulse walk through his completed universe. Eldest can thus be seen to carry a double meaning here. The oldest being in Arda and the earliest dream of its author. Tolkien's gesture places him in a distinguished lineage of authors who have also stepped into their own works as well. How about Shakespeare's Prospero? In The Tempest, what does he do? He renounces his staff and drowns his book. This is a transparent farewell of Shakespeare from playwright to stage. Mary Shelley's Victor's Frankenstein is the artist as creator confronted with the responsibility of life. Virginia Woolf's Orlando disunites writer and beloved in an immortal self-portrait. Toni Morrison's narrators resurrect the dead through the word. Joyce's HCE and Alp, as already noted, are the author's dreaming mind and its muse. Each dramatizes the creator within creation, the imagination acknowledging its own autonomy. Bombadil's laughter and Prospero's final speech are different idioms of the same act, the maker releasing the made. So Bombadil's detachment from the ring, this crystallizes Tolkien's entire philosophy of art. The ring's power is the will to command reality. So Bombadil is the power to let it be. Within Christian metaphysics, that distinction mirrors the difference between Lucifer's "I will ascend" and the divine "let there be." Tolkien's sub-creator participates in this latter divine "let there be." So, Bombadil's freedom, he neither covets nor fears the ring, because he stands at the source from which its illusion of mastery arose in the first place, namely Tolkien's own imaginative mind. His refusal to intervene in the War of the Ring embodies the author's own discipline. The storyteller must allow his world to live an air. Intervention would dissolve the reality of the fiction. Bombadil's benign non-interference in Tolkien's act of artistic humility turned into myth. Now, the ring represents corrupted creation, the desire to possess what should be freely made and shared. It is art without love. Bombadil is the antidote. He is pure creation without possession. His indifference to the ring dramatizes Tolkien's belief that true creativity is non-dominating. So Bombadil is not powerless. He is power transcendent. In this sense, Tolkien's self-portrait in Bombadil is both confession and aspiration, an artist seeking the childlike wonder that resists corruption by pride. The figure of Bombadil gathers the whole metaphysical pattern into one smiling image. The word sings, the water answers, creation flows. The Tarot stream, the four rivers of Eden, the Liffey of Joyce, the Withy Windle of Tolkien, all are reflections of the same eternal current of consciousness. In every case, the masculine Logos and feminine Sophia, they meet to generate worlds. Bombadil and Goldberry are that meeting incarnate. And like Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, Tolkien's myth ultimately has no fixed beginning or end. The Ainulindales ends with the world still unfolding. The Lord of the Rings closes with the sea calling the elves home. Creation for Tolkien, as for Joyce, is a circle. It's a song forever returning to its source. Bombadil's laughter is the echo of Iluvatar's first note, the sound of the author remembering that his work is still alive. Even in esoteric cosmologies, the supreme creator often remains outside the cycles of emanation and fall. The monad in Neoplatonism radiates being, but is unaffected by it. The demiurge shapes reality, but stands beyond the passions of creation. The watchers in 1 Enoch descend to earth and become trapped, but their heavenly archetypes remain untouched. Likewise, Bombadil is the one who remains unfallen. He lives within Middle-earth, but is not bound by its karmic laws. He is the emanator, present as an avatar, but he's still rooted in the timeless source. This is the Logos who sings creation. Tolkien's mythology begins with the music of the Ainur, where the world is sung into being. Bombadil is that music personified, the living echo of the Ainulindale, still resonating within the forests. He speaks in meter and rhyme because reality responds to his rhythm. His laughter and his song, well, they reorder chaos. They pacify Willow and they banish the White. He sings the world back into harmony. In Christian metaphysics, this aligns him with the Logos, through whom all things were made. That's John 1:3. See, in this reading, Tolkien has written himself into his story as the embodied word of creation, but clothed in humility and humor and rustic joy. The theme of the creator stepping into his own cosmos recurs in sacred and literary traditions. Take, for instance, the Gnostic. The archetype is the aeon who descends into matter but remains untainted. Well, the parallel to Bombadil is he's the creator beyond corruption. In the Platonic, the archetype is the demiurge shaping pre-existent chaos through form. The parallel to Bombadil is shaping by song. In the Kabbalistic, the archetype is Adam Kadmon. This is the primordial man containing all worlds, and the parallel to Bombadil is Bombadil as the eldest, the primordial man. In the Christian tradition, the archetype is the Word made flesh, dwelling among creation. The parallel to Bombadil's incarnation of the music. And in the modern literary tradition, Prospero in The Tempest and even Lewis's Aslan. This is the author figure who intervenes gently but decisively as Bombadil in Tolkien. Each example expresses the same mystery. The artist deity who enters creation not to rule, but to delight in its being. So, Tom Bombadil may indeed be not important to the narrative, yet he is vital to the metaphysics of the narrative. He is Tolkien's hidden signature, the sign that the author still walks among his words. Beside him stand Goldberry, the ever-flowing muse, and together they embody the harmony of creation at rest, the Logos rejoicing in Sophia, the mind delighting in its own living river. Tolkien coined eucatastrophe, that is the sudden joyful turn, where grace interrupts despair. Now, Bombadil is eucatastrophe embodied. Every time he appears, the story shifts from peril to laughter and song. He reminds both characters and readers that beyond the shadow of tragedy lies the creator's joy. He is the narrative's smile of God, Tolkien winking through the leaves. In this light, Bombadil's mystery is no oversight or accident, but it's the crowning paradox of Tolkien's mythos. The eldest remains beyond every taxonomy because he is their source. The ring cannot tempt him because he wrote it. He neither rules nor withdraws. He simply sings, allowing Middle-earth to breathe, to err, and even redeem itself. Through him, Tolkien declares that the highest creative act is not to command the world, but to love it enough to let it live. When Frodo looks at Bombadil and he sees someone the ring cannot touch, it is as if the story briefly looks back at its author, the created world glimpses its maker, and feels, for an instant, it is free of fate. In that light, Bombadil's dwelling becomes a sanctuary of meta-awareness, where myth knows it is myth, and it sings anyway. That is Tolkien's great secret, to mythologize the act of myth-making itself. Now, why does this interpretation just rock? Here's why. It explains Bombadil's immunity, limits, joy, and timelessness coherently. It resonates with Tolkien's theology of subcreation and artistic humility. It ties him to global esoteric archetypes from Orphic to Kabbalistic. It honors the mystery, Tolkien the author who won't explain himself, yet leaves a trace within his own world. Bombadil is the eldest, because he literally predates Middle-earth in Tolkien's imagination. This is brilliantly self-referential. He existed before the legendarium itself was written. Tolkien was already composing the Adventures of Tom Bombadil poems long before the Silmarillion or the Lord of the Rings were fully conceived. So, in every sense, mythically and biographically, Tom is the eldest. So that means inside the fiction, Bombadil is eldest in Arda. That means outside the fiction, Bombadil is Tolkien's firstborn mythic creation, older than all the other characters, older than the world that he eventually built. Meta-mythically even. Tolkien's act of writing him into the later stories is the creator letting his oldest imagination walk inside his own completed cosmos. It's like the Logos before Genesis entering his own narrative, or the Demiurge returning to visit his handiwork just to sing and enjoy it. So yes, this makes the interpretation even stronger. Bombadil's eldest claim isn't just poetic, it's ontological. He's the first emanation of Tolkien's imagination. When he says, Tom was here before the river and the trees, Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. It's not just a in-story mythic talk. It's Tolkien remembering his own first creative spark. He is the eldest because he existed before Middle-earth itself was born. From the mind of Tolkien came this singing presence, long before Frodo and Gandalf and Sauron. Tom Bombadil is Tolkien's first dream walking through his final masterpiece. Tolkien as the eldest being, the first consciousness in his universe, the living soul whose heartbeat brought Middle-earth into being itself. Tom Bombadil is the flesh and blood Tolkien himself, the man on Gaia, the only truly incarnate being in the mythic continuum. Every other entity, the hobbits, the elves, the Maiar, even the Valar, that flows outward as emanations of Tolkien's imagination. The ring can't tempt him because it is his own creation. He cannot covet what he already is. He is the dreamer awake inside of his own dream, and he is serenely aware that all others are the music he composed. So when Bombadil laughs, it's Tolkien's laughter echoing through the veils of myth, the sound of the author remembering that the universe, for all of its peril, was born of joy. So before there was Middle-earth, before elves or Valar or Shire, there was a man, a quiet scholar at his desk in the green heart of England. He was the first to walk the soil, the first to dream a world within the world. His name was John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, and long before he gave us Frodo or Gandalf, he breathed into being another, Tom Bombadil. Tom was eldest, not because he witnessed the first sunrise of Arda, but because he existed before Arda itself. He is the living bridge between flesh and myth, the author's own heartbeat walking in his creation. In Bombadil, Tolkien wrote himself into eternity, not as a tyrant of worlds, but as their humble gardener. He enters the tale not to rule it, but to rejoice in it. His power is the power of delight, of unpossessive love. The ring cannot touch him because he is the hand that wrote it. He is the artist unfallen, the poet before the fall of pride, singing because to sing is to be. Goldberry, river daughter, is his muse, the flowing current of imagination through which his words become life. Together they are the marriage of mind and world, Logos and Sophia, author and inspiration. Their home is the Withywindle Valley in the heart of creation, where word becomes water and thought becomes light. And when he laughs, it is the laughter of God through the pen of a man, the echo of creation remembering itself. So, yes, he is the eldest, not merely within the story, but before it. The first consciousness to awaken, the one who dreamed Middle Earth into being, and then he stepped inside for the sheer joy of walking barefoot through his own imagination. He is Tolkien, and Tolkien is Tom Bombadil, the master who refused mastery, the creator who chose wonder over dominion. And perhaps that is the secret of all great myth, that the truest power belongs not to those who rule their worlds, but to those who love them enough to let them live. Tom was here before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless. He is the master, and he is free. Tolkien becomes both the maker of worlds and the humble man walking through the morning dew he imagined into being, the living consciousness inside myth itself. The truest artist is the one who wakens within his own art, loves it, and then lets it go. That's the essence of the eldest, the creator who remembers he's real, that the story is his child, and that the act of imagining is itself divine participation in being. That's why I believe Tom Bombadil is J.R.R. Tolkien. Thanks for watching the Backyard Professor Esoteric Studies. I'll be back with more as I have time. I hope you guys have a very blessed night. Good night.